Where are we?
This is Mark McNease in New York City, and you're listening to Age to Perfection, brought to you by LGBTSR, where age is embraced and life is celebrated. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. This is Mark, and we are here for another health chat with Master Herbalist Cathy McNease, all the way from Hi, Cathy. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. I've been working in my garden all day, so it's been a marvelous day.
Marvelous here, too. It was beautiful. The whole weekend was nice, but today was gorgeous and sunny, and I was telling you earlier that Frank and I walked 7 miles, which is huge. I mean, walking is really good exercise, you know, and I think especially for an older person, it's easy to do as long as you get out and do it. It feels really good.
It's free, and you're out communing with nature, which I think is one of the big problems in our society. Is people are divorced from nature, which means they're divorced from themselves, which leaves for a pretty grim state of affairs.
Yes, and we went to the river, so it was nature, because in an urban setting, you can do a lot of walking, and I guess you're around other people, but if you can also go to the parks, and you can do what we did and walk all the way around the river, not around the river, but along the river. It was beautiful and very healthy. So tonight, thank you. I'm looking to lose weight too, because I've got too much of it. We've had that conversation many times. I feel it, it's just, my body doesn't need the extra 30 pounds. So maybe starting today, I'll be able to shave some of that off. Now tonight, go ahead.
I've lost 20 since October.
Oh,
and
awesome.
The difference on my joints is remarkable. The difference on my head is remarkable.
Yeah.
So I encourage you to do whatever it takes to get that adipose reduced.
Excellent. And I'm going to have to look up adipose.
Fat.
Oh, okay.
Fat.
So now I don't have to call myself fat anymore. I can just say I'm adipose.
You have excess adipose.
I have excess adipose.
Yeah.
Now we're going to talk about respiratory issues, which is, most of these things are also timely for me and others. And Frank has been having some respiratory stuff, just a little shortness of breath and that. And so I thought it'd be a really good topic. So let's hit that.
Sure. Well, the lungs in traditional Chinese medicine are associated with the large intestine, so they're a paired organ. So whenever we're looking at lung health, we also are going to want to make sure that the bowels are open and the bowels are healthy. One of the reasons that we see so many respiratory ailments in this time of year in the spring often has to do with the allergies and the pollens that are in the air, which the lungs have direct contact with the exterior environment. So the lungs are being bombarded with dust, pollen, animal hair, whatever it is, that may set up a reaction to create mucus as a protection, but that can be problematic when it comes to the lungs. So the lungs can get filled up with phlegm as a result of an allergic reaction, or just the irritant of having dust and wind and those things in the air. So we tend to see a lot of lung problems in the spring when it's windy and the dust is getting stirred up. Another component that's a contributing factor why spring lung problems exist is in the wintertime, we tend to eat a much heavier diet, especially where you are, Mark. In California, we don't have quite as extreme. I mean, we don't have an extreme like that. But we tend to eat heavier foods in the winter, so there's a tendency to be more sedentary, and you put on a little weight. And then comes springtime, if you're in tune with your body and with nature, it's time to lighten up, get into salads and juices and fruits and, more vegetables and less of the cheesy things and heavy things. But when we don't do that, then it's really a burden on the respiratory system. There's this saying in Chinese medicine that the digestive system makes phlegm and the lung stores it. So if we're eating, lots of cheesy things, for instance, come springtime and when warm weather comes, that may be a direct contributor to why you have so much mucus in your head or phlegm in your lungs.
Okay.
Okay. Along the subject of phlegm, let me give a little bit of information about what you can learn from observing your phlegm. So the phlegm, if it's yellow or green, tells us about heat or inflammation. If the phlegm is more white or clear, then that tells us more about some cold sort of pathogen. The yellow and green phlegm may be a bacterial infection, and that may be a time when antibiotics may be indicated, or antibiotic type of herbs, things like golden seal and coptis and scutellaria. Those are herbs that will have antibiotic properties we would use in the yellow phlegm. If it's more the white or clear phlegm, then that's a time when we may do well to do some of the warming spices, some of the things like cardamom seeds and ginger root and fennel seeds. Those sorts of herbs are going to be very helpful for that more cold type of phlegm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, another issue that we see with the lungs is just a general weakness, and there may or may not be phlegm, but it may present as easy to get short of breath, just a little bit of exercise and you get short of breath, or it's hard to talk for a long time without the voice getting weak, hard to project the voice. Those are all signs of that lung qi being deficient. So anytime we're looking at qi being deficient, one of the things I always want to make sure that I evaluate is, are you eating enough protein foods? So animal foods are sources of protein, but also beans could be a source of protein. Tofu is a source of protein. So after evaluating protein for that lung qi deficiency, then some of the foods that I would be thinking about to suggest would be ones that are orange and green, and ones that are vegetables that are orange and green are very rich in beta-carotene. And beta-carotene is a nutrient that nourishes the lungs. Another thing that's important is good deep breathing. And a lot of people are shallow breathers, and breathing is my lifeline to sanity. If I didn't know how to use breathing to calm me down and help me feel peaceful, I'd be in a bad way. But it also helps when there's weakness in the lungs to spend 5 minutes a day just consciously, mindfully doing long, deep breaths down into the belly.
Okay.
Another aspect of the lung that is sometimes problematic has to do with the emotional connection. In traditional Chinese medicine, we look at the lungs as being the container for sadness and grief. And so whenever there are lung issues going on, whether it's cough or shortness of breath or weak voice, any of those lung issues, it's always a good idea to revisit any sadness or grief that you may have experienced and make sure that you experience it fully. Make sure you processed your grief.
Okay, I think that I'm a shallow breather for sure.
Uh-huh.
And
one of the things you might be able to improve that with is imagine breathing through your feet, like you're breathing carrots from the bottoms of your feet down into the earth, and it's through those carrots that you're breathing. And the image helps get your breath down a little bit lower instead of just up in the upper chest.
Well, I imagine that's very good for stress, too.
Very, very good for stress. There's an herb I want to mention as well that's a useful one when we're trying to strengthen the lungs It's a Chinese herb called astragalus or huang qi. Huang qi means yellow qi because it's a root that's yellow in color, and it's used for qi. And it's an easy herb to put into foods. When you, say, cook a pot of soup, you can put several of the root slices in, and it has a pleasant flavor. It's also an herb that is available in other forms, teas and tinctures and tablets. And it's especially useful for that person who tends to have a little more vulnerability in their lungs. Maybe they catch colds easily, or they're a little short of breath, a little more vulnerable in the lungs. That can be a helpful herb.
Now, what are some things that, for instance, shortness of breath, what are some other things that could be indicative of? Because I mentioned to Frank, it may not be your lungs. It may be something else.
Okay. Another of the factors that can contribute to shortness of breath, if it's not a lung issue. So, with lung issues, we'd have emphysema, asthma. Those could cause shortness of breath. So if those have been ruled out, then another component can be that there's a weakness in the kidneys. And there's a connection between the kidneys and the lung. What we say is the lungs bring in oxygen and the kidneys grasp it. So when the kidneys are very depleted, and that happens from stress and getting old, when the kidneys are depleted, then they're not so effective in helping bring that energy down. Mm-hmm. One of the best herbs I know of for that sort of shortness of breath, where there's a lung and kidney thing, deficiency, is called Schizandra, Schizandra, Schizandra. And it's a little berry that is used for many things, helps the immune system. It helps reduce elevated liver enzymes. It's a versatile herb for many things. But one of its specialties is that shortness of breath related to a kidney deficiency. So if kidney deficiency is the case, there may be back pain, there may be insomnia, there may be inability to deal with stress easily. All those would suggest that the adrenals are compromised.
Okay.
So when the adrenals are compromised, you want to think about foods that are going to strengthen the kidney organ system. So dark-colored foods, blueberries, raspberries, seaweed, dark leafy greens.
Okay. Is kale one of those? Is kale one of those?
Kale definitely is one of those. So those dark things have a lot of minerals in them. And so the minerals are very good for restoration of the kidney organ system, which includes the adrenals. So I think from what you've described, probably a kidney component is what your friend is dealing with.
Okay. Now, I was going to say one other thing too, and then I want to mention your book is so you'll oftentimes mention herbs, Chinese herbs, and so a listener might say, well, where do I find that? Because you're not going to really find it at Duane Reade or CBS generally. So where can people find herbs that they want to investigate? There
are natural food stores like Whole Foods is one we have out here that will have an assortment of herbal products in various different forms, and hopefully someone on staff that can explain and help you figure out which is the best product. There are resources online, although I'm sometimes suspect of crap I find online as far as information about herbs. There's a lot of misinformation there. There's the American Herbalist Guild. You can go to their website, and they will have a resource of herbalists that practice in the country.
Okay.
And that way you can find somebody that's a skilled herbalist. More and more, herbalism is not such a strange profession as it was when I started doing this 40 years ago. So you can even find herbalists in the phone book sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You may need to find a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner or acupuncturist, and they often have herbs available in their practices as well.
Okay. Now, do you have any further thoughts before I mention your wonderful book?
I think not. Go right ahead.
You have a book out of columns and writings. It's called In Harmony with the Seasons, Herbs, Nutrition, and Well-Being by the Herb Goddess of Ojai, by the way, that's you. And it's on Amazon. It's in paperback and also ebooks. And it's just great. I've mentioned it before, and I'll mention it again. It's just wonderful reading. It's very easy to understand. You don't have to be an Eastern medicine Chinese, doctrinaire person to understand it. It's really easy to understand, and it's very, very helpful.
That was the intention of the articles. They were written primarily as educational materials for my patients.
Right, and a lot of it is about foods, simple things. You know, if somebody's like thinking, well, I don't know about these herbs, but a lot of it is also has to do with nutrition and foods that we eat every day.
I've recently had a wonderful experience with the Hispanic community in my area, and the particular families that I have been working with don't have a lot of money. They purchase herbs when they're indicated, but many of the ailments that they come to me with can be addressed with dietary changes, and they're very open to that possibility. So it's been really interesting to have to put food as the modality on account of cost being a factor with these families, and it's wonderful to see how receptive they are and how much change we can make in making diet changes.
Yes. Well, Cathy, thank you for another delightful health chat and a little bit of catching up here, because you are my sister. I think most people know that. If they don't, they do now. And that's it for today. We'll be back in a few weeks with another good topic. And I'll get in another 15,000 steps a day, hopefully, between now and then, and be less adipose.
Well, excellent. I'm going out to do more gardening.
Okay, well, enjoy it. You said it was beautiful, so have a good time.
Gorgeous. I will.
Okay, bye.
Bye, Mark.